consume your average Republican media, you think we are winning. They focus on the things that are happening and they talk about how dumb the left is. But I think what you understand is that the left is energized. You do not even have to tell them to vote. I'm telling you, these guys are just showing up. And that's what I'm concerned about. The Republican Party of Texas was texting and reaching out to every Republican. The Tarrant GOP, actually our local GOP chair, grassroots guy, working really hard. The statewide elected officials, Lee's campaign, other outside groups reaching out to people. There were individuals who got 10 texts, 5 mailers, the addresses. People talk to them. They get invited to teletown halls with Ted Cruz and Brandon Gill and all these people, and they didn't show up to vote. And the Democrats were showing up every single day. So I think understanding just how much energy they have is really important. But yeah, I will say this. CNN is not accurate to say this means that Texas is going to shift by 30 points. But what it is an indicator of is the fact that they have way more energy on their side. And if we don't wake up, we are going to lose seats we otherwise wouldn't have lost. And know that the moderate establishment forces in Texas are doing everything they can to make sure that any conservative Republican nominee does not fare well in an attempt to steer the entire party apparatus back into the middle.
Two things. Number one, they think they're going to pull a Colorado on Texas. You can see how they're already laying the issues down, et cetera. Also, 2018, as I warned, if you didn't focus on 2018 and do the work that Nancy Pelosi was doing that summer, she was promising they were going to impeach Trump, and they did impeach Trump, and that's going to happen. My fear right now, if you look at it, it's not a 2018 problem. I think you have a 2010, the great Tea Party revolt. We won 63 seats. These people are putting in the work and the effort, and they have the energy. What's the primary? We're down here and we're going to spend the month in Texas. What is this primary on 3 March going to tell us about what our prospects are for November, sir?
Yeah, my dad always told me that I was really good at running with the football before I caught it when I was a receiver. And that's what often happens to the primary. So look, next month, if you're over 65, you might be getting a mail-in ballot to your house. If you requested one, there's about 5 or 6% of the people that vote that way. In 2 weeks, you can go early vote, and then you can go vote. Of course, this election is 4 weeks from Tuesday. This thing is going to be upon us before we even know it. And the reality is that there are a lot of liberal Republicans, especially in the rural areas, that are being challenged by conservative challengers who should be held accountable. Now, there's a really good opportunity we have to make sure that the Republicans are on the ballot in November are actually the conservatives, the ones who are going to walk the walk after they win in November. So I think there's a massive battle going on in Texas for the next 30 days. You know this, but 17 Republican incumbents lost their primary 2 years ago to conservative challengers. We have been moving this state to the right consistently every single election cycle, and this election cycle should be no different. So there's open seats that matter. There are current champions in the legislature, Andy Hopper, David Lowe, Brian Harrison, these guys who are being challenged from their left. Okay, so the Austin Swamp has recruited people to try to take them out. They are running. So everybody needs to be on the alert. And I just want to remind everybody, you know this, but if they vote and actually just post on their social media that they did vote, that they researched the candidates, that they know who actually are the good conservative choices, they're going to have multiple friends reach out and not even know there's an election going on. They're not going to cast one ballot. They're going to cast 2, 3, 4, or 5 legally because they're actually informed. So I think there's a really good opportunity here in the next 30 days, and I hope we can keep talking about that. Thank you for coming down to Texas to focus on these important elections, Steve.
Luke, one more time before I let you go. Your advice and warning to the grassroots of Texas. The grassroots, as Texas goes, so goes the nation, and particularly President Trump's presidency. If we're to lose these midterms, we lose the House, it's going to be a very different deal starting in 2027. What is your advice and warning? We got about a minute, sir.
First, let's focus for the next 30 days on making sure that the Republican ticket that we have going forward in November is one that we can be proud of and know with confidence is going to deliver on the promises that give us the energy to go out and tell every single person we know to go vote. And then when that happens, we have to make sure that we also don't start shooting other conservatives in our own party. Now, we do have moderate forces in our party, but we have really good conservative leadership that's actually been willing to be a voice for the grassroots. Everybody's really frustrated right now. So I think we need to really hone in our frustrations on the most moderate forces in our party and try to minimize their influence, win in March, and then actually work our tails off knowing that the Democrats are really, really, really angry. really scared, and we're not. Some of that lack of fear comes from our faith in Christ, but some of that just comes from a complacency. We can't be complacent, because if you wake up in November and Democrats have made serious grounds, you're going to have red counties that went blue. You're going to have a House majority that has swung not just a little in Democrats' favor, but a ton in Democrats' favor, which gives them a lot of wiggle room to screw up the America First agenda for not just one cycle, but the next 10 years.
Luke, social media, and where do we get to your show, sir?
At Luke Macias TX on X and on YouTube, The Luke Macias Show. Follow it anytime. We do once a week, not every single day. Sorry, Steve, I just don't have the stamina. But we talk about what's happening in Texas. Less than 30 minutes, the inside of Texas politics.
Sir, you're terrific. Thank you for coming on this morning. Sure.
Ever wonder why high blood pressure feels so stubborn? No matter how hard you try, I totally get that frustration. For years, my numbers stayed high, and the solutions I followed seemed to only treat symptoms, never the real root cause. I ate well, exercised, followed all the advice, but the improvements never lasted. Then I stumbled upon a truly eye-opening interview with Dr. Arjun Bhatt, a renowned cardiologist, recognized for his cardiovascular research and work with the Cleveland Clinic. He presented a perspective that changed everything. Unstable blood pressure isn't just about salt or stress. It's often linked to a silent buildup that occurs in the kidneys, affecting the body's natural pressure regulation. And he made it clear that most common remedies aren't designed to address this underlying issue. But the most fascinating part was the solution he shared: a simple, natural morning ritual known as the Pressure Balance Protocol. It uses 2 everyday ingredients inspired by isolated communities in places like Hunza and Okinawa, where hypertension is remarkably rare. Curious, I started doing it every single day. And in just 7 days, I felt a real difference. My sleep improved, my mind felt calmer, and that constant feeling of heaviness and fatigue just faded away. Best of all, my checkups finally started reflecting what I felt inside: balance and lightness. I've left the link below for you to watch it for free. In the interview, Dr. Bhatt reveals why conventional approaches often focus on masking symptoms, while the real issue might be quietly growing, and the simple 30-second protocol that has already helped thousands regain control of their cardiovascular health without strict diets or expensive treatments. If you haven't seen this interview yet, watch it while it's still available. The video is free, short, and straight to the point, and it's already been watched by over 12,000 people in just the last few weeks. To watch Dr. Bhatt's full presentation and discover the Pressure Balance Protocol. This simple ritual could be the first step to taking back control of your blood pressure and your peace of mind. And the best part? It's at no cost today, because this presentation is part of a health awareness campaign focused on natural heart health.
President Trump delivered on his promises, but we can't get complacent. None of our America First agenda will be secure until we build the Red Wall. Turning Point PAC is building the Red Wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, key battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. We're funding door knockers who will win the next elections.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. Make sure you go. Peter and I are going to talk. Dr. Navarro, we're going to go to the White House. He's going to join us momentarily. Peter Navarro is one of the best analysts and observers of what's going on with the Chinese Communist Party, not just their economics, but also their military, political, all that. She's come out over the weekend and let the cat out of the bag that he's very focused on making the Chinese currency a competing reserve currency to the United States dollar. That is something we've warned about for years. This is why we did the end of the dollar empire, because it's quite evident that the Chinese Communist Party is going to kind of compete with us everywhere to become a hegemon. Go to birchgold.com, promo code Bannon, end of the dollar empire. You get all up to speed. Under 5 years, we've been putting this out. Started when goal was 1,000 goals all over the place. Now talk to Philip Patrick and the team. Do it today. I'm trying to get Philip on tomorrow. So I've got a bunch of hitters in a row. I got Peter Navarro. I got Peter Schweitzer, Captain Fennell, Natalie Winters. All we're going to talk about China geopolitics and your money, and the foreign powers, CCP in Mexico, assisting this invasion of the country. Dr. Navarro, I want to come on with you, bring you up now. By the way, the president put out a very nice photo. If we can put that up today, said some nice things about Dr. Navarro and yours truly. And I wanted, that is from Peter Navarro's wedding. I think I was giving a toast to you, Peter. It was a great, your bride was absolutely beautiful, Bonnie. You definitely married.
I think you were talking about the rise of gold, man. We could.
Well, I had to, I was given a toast. And I had to make it. I thought, I'd get a sponsor hit in there just in case, because you had a pretty prominent group.
You were at the right place.
Exactly, the gold room. Peter, growth, economic growth. The president, I think, is quite concerned about a government shutdown. His theory is that, hey, it took a couple points off of last year's growth as your guys' economic plan, particularly tariffs, forcing manufacturing back here, also the money, cash coming in of tariffs, the big, beautiful bill, the supply side tax cut. It's all clicking. I'm here in Texas, and the Sunday paper in Texas, because they had a huge freeze last week, Peter, it had this huge story on the front. It said, freezes over, economy heats up. In North Texas and the Dallas area, I think things are starting to kick in as you guys forecasted. How treacherous are the Democrats right now? Because we talked with Mike Davis. I mean, they are really trying to jam us up on immigration enforcement, particularly mass deportations, with all these things they want from President Trump, including judicial warrants to basically deport anybody. Your thoughts, sir?
Chapter 37 of the Democrats hate Trump more than they love this country. This is just a variation on that theme. I mean, the shutdown will slow things down. It'll cost people's jobs, and it will lessen the good pressures to increase wages. So I guess what's important as we move into the November cycle, Steve, is just to keep reminding people of how we got to where we were when Trump took over. We were in one of the worst places we've been in since the Great Depression. We had skyrocketing inflation. We had a recession on the horizon. We had real wages, which were once again negative, meaning that inflation was outrunning the wage level. And Donald Trump has turned that around. In 2026, absent shocks like government shutdowns and things that could happen geopolitically, is positioned to be, Steve, one of the best years in this country's history. It's pretty amazing, and it's all Trump policy driven. I mean, the fountainhead is the drill baby drill policy, because it's not just lower gas we pay and lower heating oil. I mean, it filters through transportation costs for companies, fertilizer and food prices, and the whole ball of wax. We've got the largest tax rebate coming in history in April for the middle class, and that's going to be a tremendous lift to the economy. We've seen $18 trillion of investment pledged and already beginning to bear fruits. And one of the things I'm doing, Steve, is I do these little 3-minute hits on the Navarro Express podcast where I look at the data and actually give you the right interpretation of the data. For example, just on Friday, the producer price index came out, and it was like, people were like tearing their hair out, oh, it's inflationary, this, that, and the other thing. But when you look beneath the hood of that, the increase was driven purely by an artifact of, I don't know if you know this, Steve, but when the stock market goes up significantly, it actually pushes the inflation index up. But it's got nothing to do with meat and potatoes, bread and things like that on the table. And in fact, the same PPI report showed that what I've been watching very carefully is the rebirth of our manufacturing capacity. So that, 100% expensing on a big, beautiful bill. And then people are going to have money in their pockets. It's not just the rebate, it's the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime and seniors, no tax on Social Security. Steve, that's huge. That's a big hit. So, and of course, the trade deficit. I mean, I've been saying this for 10 years now. It's like when you have a falling deficit, that's reflected in higher GDP growth. It's purely a mathematical equation, and we were losing 1 to 2% of GDP every year for the last 20 years as our factories have gone offshore, and now that's coming back. So things look really good. The new Fed chair announcement, I think you and I agree, is puzzling in the sense that he has a reputation for being hawkish and a strong dollar guy, and I always thought the term weak and strong dollar were wrong. That's not what it's all about. It's like, what's a fairly valued dollar in a world of fair trade? It's been hurting us. And by the way, you led off with the Chinese, Steve. It's like, how is Xi Jinping going to create a global currency when they've got like 30 years of history engaged in currency manipulation? I mean, why would any country want to tie their currency to the biggest currency manipulator in world history?
Peter,
but of
hang on
course,
for a
China's
second.
doing that to avoid sanctions.
We just want to hold you quickly. I know you got a bolt. We just want to hold you quickly through the break. The bold choice of President Trump for Fed chair. Kevin Warsh got some very interesting theories on productivity and how to grow with no inflation.
President Trump delivered on his promises, but we can't get complacent. None of our America First agenda will be secure until we build the Red Wall. Turning Point PAC is building the Red Wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, key battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. We're funding door knockers who will win the next elections in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Today, we're asking for your immediate support. Donate at tprav.com or scan the QR code now to fund our field operations.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shop. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Charlie may be gone, but his legacy lives on. In you, in me, in the groundswell of patriotism he ignited nationwide. Now it's up to us to continue the fight for the heart and soul of America in his stead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code to fund Turning Point PAC's grassroots operation. At Turning Point PAC, we're 100% committed to Charlie's big picture vision to build the Red Wall, starting in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Nevada, the 3 battleground states.
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. There's not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you're trying to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
It's Monday, 2 February in the year of our Lord 2026. Peter Schweitzer's on deck. Natalie Winters, Captain Fennell. We've got Dr. Navarro, our trade czar. So, Dr. Navarro, Kevin Warsh, he was the cover bid back when, you know, for some reason, not enough due diligence was done on Powell, and he was selected. Kevin's got some very interesting, sophisticated thoughts about growth, non-inflationary growth, to hit these kind of hyper growth targets the president's talking about, 4 or 5%, maybe even higher, and not have inflation with increases in productivity. It's one of the reasons, I think, central reasons that he was selected, although maybe on monetary policy he's not 100% on board, but it's this growth with no inflation, because that's what 2026 is going to be about. You tackle both the affordability issue and the with growth and with maybe turbo growth. Is that why you say this could be the best year in a long time for the American economy? Is 2026, given what you guys accomplish, both with trade, the commercial relationships, the supply side tax cut to go into plant and equipment, and eventually by May at the latest we won't have too late Powell around, sir?
Steve, you said something really, really important here, because there's a seeming contradiction between Kevin Warsh's hawkish view on inflation and wanting a strong dollar versus what we want, which is a lower interest rate environment. Okay, and here's how you square that circle. With Jay Powell, arguably the dumbest, most malevolent Fed chairman we've had in our history, has never been able to understand is how Trump policies, including tariffs, can actually produce non-inflationary strong growth. He just didn't get the paradigm. He assumed back in 2018, when we were rocking and rolling, that somehow as the economy was accelerating, that had to create inflation. He couldn't wrap around his head around deregulation, strategic energy dominance, tariffs, basically leading to strong non-inflationary growth. The hope here is that Kevin Warsh understands that. So it can be no longer a contradiction that he's an inflation hawk, and yet he will lower interest rates because he understands how the Trump economy works. And so that's the most important thing I'm probably going to tell you in the next 2 months, because that's what we need to watch. We need to watch Warsh's rhetoric, and we need to watch exactly what he did. And by the way, Steve, I don't know, nobody should think that the Fed chairman is God and can simply determine interest rate policy. He's stuck essentially with a hostile majority on the Federal Reserve Board until we clean house. The big question is going to be whether Powell resigns or not. If he sticks around, he'll try to screw us.
I think President Trump. I think President Trump said this about Hassett coming out of the race. He likes the team he's got. He's made bets on these policies. They're starting to work. He's got bets in the Treasury, Hassett at NEC. He's got Jameson Greer as the trade czar. He's got you as your manufacturing guy. He likes the team he's got in place. You guys are all in harness, pulling. You just don't need a too late Powell. You used the word malevolent, and I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's a lot of animosity there by Powell to President Trump's populist nationalist policies, which are clearly working, and he's part of the globalist old guard that's going to fight this. Peter, I want to tell the audience, you're putting up these little clips every day to explain it in layman's terms. Where do we go get all your content, sir?
Yeah, just go to PeterNavarro.com. It's the gateway to the podcast. It's called the Navarro Express. It's the gateway to the Substack. It's the gateway to X, Getter, and Truth. And we're really putting out some really good content. The videos are kind of 60-second videos, Steve. We're getting close to 1 million hits on those things now every time they go up. And the important part about them is that they actually explain in lay terms the nuances of economic policy, which is it's hard to do, but somehow we pull it off. So check it out, PeterNavarro.com, and Steve, you're at the forefront of economics commentary. It's like I think people learn more listening to your show than they do listening to the financial news, or certainly reading, the Journal or Bloomberg or the FT, which are all they're all colored. They all have an internal bias, a Wall Street bias against the Trump policies. And somehow we're going to win this one because when people have more food on their table at cheaper prices, bigger paychecks, better retirement, houses that they can buy for a change, they're going to say, yeah, Trumponomics is what works. Trust in Trump.
He's got the right team. He's got the right policy. I think he was very clear on the Warsh pick. I like Hassett at NEC. The White House is working great with Treasury.
We'll see. We have a great team, and don't forget Howard Lutnick. Okay,
Howard Lutnick over Commerce.
5 of us here, and Howard. I mean, Commerce has a tremendous role to play with the 232 investigations and the anti-dumping countervailing duties. Jameson over at USTR is lead point on all the negotiating. Scott's kind of the master of the international finance system, and Kevin has a fine touch in terms of understanding kind of the basic macro indicators, and he played a big role, Steve, in the big beautiful bill, and that's always been Kevin's wheelhouse, is taxes. So I can't think of a better team for President Trump this time around. And by the way, Jay Powell, Mnuchin's folly. Okay?
No,
that was Steve Mnuchin.
President Trump, when he's unshackled from that, I think he sees it. You can have non-inflationary growth rates of 4% and 5%. I mean, and you said, this is unheard of. Anyway, Peter, I know you got a bolt.
All right, brother.
We'll put the videos up. Thank you so much.
I love that picture that the boss put out on Truth of you and I. That's
I don't know where they got it, but thank you. That was a great wedding.
Here.
Two other great ones. The great Dan Scavino, one of the best guys, got married this weekend at Mar-a-Lago, and of course Alice Brusewitz. A lot of folks went down for that. Alice got married also this weekend. So big events in MAGA world. I got a cold open for Peter Schweitzer. I want to play this. It's going to be in Spanish, so we may not be able to understand all. If you got the TV, you'll see the closed caption. Let's go ahead and these are Mexican officials responding to Peter Schweitzer's Invisible Coup, which is the New York Times #1 bestseller. We're not bringing on chopped liver here. Only the best. New York Times #1 bestseller for a conservative book is almost unheard of. Let's see what the Mexican government had to say about his New York Times #1 bestseller, Invisible Coup.
Ayer salió un comunicado de la Secretaría de Relaciones Exteriores. Es una persona que escribió este libro, de ahí retomaron. Es un libro que dice que desde los consulados estamos haciendo política para Estados Unidos o en Estados Unidos, cosa que es absolutamente falsa. Los consulados tienen una labor que está determinada por las leyes internacionales y lo que hacen nuestros consulados esencialmente es la protección de los mexicanos en Estados Unidos y la atención de los mexicanos en Estados Unidos. Esa es su labor.
Thank you. Peter, as we say in the narrative warfare business, you drew blood. What was the president of Mexico's not a big fan of your book, although she might have bought a couple of 3 copies to have it read by her cabinet. What was her response? You actually said there are members in these Mexican consulates. They got 53 when every other big nation in the world's got 4 or 5 or 6. You've got guys in the Senate that have maps. I think it was a map in the back of one of the things, the United States of Mexico, and it's got areas of the United States in it. You called these guys out, not the cartels, not the 7 families that own the country, but the political class up there for actively working on this invasion, or as you say in your subtitle, using immigration as a weapon. Their response, sir, what was her response directly to you?
Well, it's funny. She didn't use my name. She was asked about the book with my name, and she said that man with that book was the way that she described me. What's funny about her response, Steve, is she says, no, it's absolutely false. But the book, I know you've read it, the book literally quotes Mexican consular officials is saying this is what they're doing. And they're meeting amongst themselves. They're talking about how they're conspiring against Trump to prevent Republicans from getting elected. There are quotes in there from consular officials saying that they're paying for people to apply for citizenship because they want to get more voters. So she's denying the facts of what her own people are saying. And it's funny, Steve, because as much as they are open in saying this amongst themselves, they are desperate to make sure that the majority of American people don't pay attention. I want to read to you yet another quote. This is from the head of the Mexican news agency. And this is what he said, which I think captures it perfectly. He says, quote, "We are quietly carrying out the reconquest of our territories the U.S. took from us in 1848. The reconquest of the Aztec territory is silent. And the day the gringos realize this, their diabolical fundamentalism will become macabre." In other words, we don't want them to really figure out what's going on. This is a guy, by the way, who's the head literally of like the Associated Press of Mexico. So they're scared and they're nervous, and I appreciate the War Room and the War Room posse buying the book. We are #1 on the New York Times list, despite the fact that nobody in the establishment media wanted that to happen.
No, they still refuse to review it because there's too many truths in here. I want to hold you through the break, but before you go to break, to have in Mexico, a journalist actually ask her about this book shows you how afraid they are, because the media class down there, et cetera, is very tuned into what's the government's happening. So this clearly, they're hearing that, hey, this guy Schweitzer, who's very prominent in MAGA movement, has written 5 New York Times bestsellers in a row. This is #1 New York Times. So this book's getting a wide hearing. Invisible Coup. It was dangerous enough that they felt they had to ask her, and it sounded like she wanted to get out in front of this too, saying this man is a total liar. This is what the gringos do. It's a complete and total lie. I mean, are you pretty impressed that the book would have that impact in Mexico, and they just wouldn't say, slough it off, we don't have to address this? Clearly, they felt they had to address it.
Yeah, and you also had the Mexican ambassador to the United States go on with Maria Bartiromo yesterday on Fox News on her Sunday show, and she asked him about it, and we got the same kind of answer, which was, oh, no, we would absolutely never do that. So they clearly are scared. They clearly are nervous. Sheinbaum also, in her responses to the book, also attempted to sort of separate Trump from me, saying, well, this guy's kind of crazy and Trump doesn't buy into this stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to speak for President Trump, but I did meet with him and we talked about the book, and he sent out a very nice comment on Truth Social praising the book, telling everybody to buy it. So they're clearly nervous. And I would add, Steve, we're starting to slowly get the wheels grinding in Washington. I've been asked by Senator Schmidt of Missouri to testify before the Judiciary Committee in March on the China birthright citizenship. And I think we're going to start getting some action in some of the other government agencies to really start taking the fight to the people that have weaponized immigration against us.
If you just stay through the break, in fact, I want to pivot next to China. Xi put out a notice over the weekend that he intends to have the Chinese currency compete with the United States as a prime reserve currency. If you read Peter's book, Invisible Coup, you understand that the strategies of Mexico and the CCP are quite different. They're two foreign powers that are using immigration as a weapon against us. The Chinese Communist Party, I think, has grander designs. We're going to take a short commercial break. Take your phone out and text Bannon, B-A-N-N-O-N, at 989898. Get the ultimate guide. This guide is free, no obligations. We're investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump, and you get access to Philip Patrick. That's what you need. You need to talk to him.
President Trump delivered on his promises, but we can't get complacent. None of our America First agenda will be secure until we build the Red Wall. Turning Point PAC is building the Red Wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, key battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. We're funding door knockers who will win the next elections in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Today, we're asking for your immediate support. Donate at tprad.com or scan the QR code now to fund our field operations.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Oak Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shop. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Oak Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Oak Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison.
We were prosecuted, persecuted.
J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Charlie may be gone, but his legacy lives on. In you, in me, in the groundswell of patriotism he ignited nationwide. Now it's up to us to continue the fight for the heart and soul of America in his stead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code to fund Turning Point PAC's grassroots operation. At Turning Point PAC, we're 100% committed to Charlie's big picture vision to build the Red Wall. Starting in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Nevada, the 3 battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. Go to tprav.com or scan the QR code and donate to support Charlie's vision. We can build an impenetrable red wall that will destroy the Democrats' plans and pave the way to victory for America First candidates in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Your gift helps us deploy door knockers, chase ballots, and ramp up our grassroots efforts for the fight ahead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code now to help us win in key battleground states.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
I'm a J6er, and I spent 3 months in jail and about a year in prison.
I spent 4 years out of an 18-year sentence in prison.
J6ers have been smeared and defamed by the media, persecuted by the government, and treated like terrorists.
In reality, J6ers are patriotic men and women, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers from all walks.
How do you respond to Peter Schweizer's comments there?
First of all, thank you for having me, Maria. I think that facts are much better than opinions. And I just want to tell you that when he says that we're working against President Trump, you know that the vote of Latinos to President Trump rose from 28% in 2016 to 48% in 2025. Mexican migration has been dropping constantly since 2000. And so what you see is that reality offers a very different view. Mexican and United States government are working very, very closely in order to tackle the migratory issue. You've heard President Trump saying in the UN and in Davos that the border is the most secure border in the world. And regarding security, you know that deaths because of fentanyl overdose have dropped 27% in the US. And that's because President Sheinbaum has been very, very tough against Mexican cartels. You know that she sent 10,000 soldiers to the border. She has apprehended 24,000 people, and they have destroyed about 1,700 labs in Mexico. So the thing that you can see is that Mexico is part of the solution, not the problem.
You know, my eyes aren't what they used to be, Peter Schweizer, but the ambassador for Mexico to the United States, is he sitting in front of a map that says the United States of Mexico and it's got like territories of the United States in it? Sir?
Yeah, it literally says that right across the United States. That is the name of Mexico, but it is ironic because President Sheinbaum talks about, the United States being Mexico North. And it's funny because I just want to read to you. This is a song that President Sheinbaum had commissioned. This is a song they play in Mexico at all the official events. It's called the Migrant Hymn. And this is how helpful they're being, Steve. It says, and though my birth certificate says American, I am pure Mexican. We change places but not flags. I carry green, white, and red in my veins. That's the color of their flag. Like the eagle, we fly without borders. We break through the fence that separates lands. And I could go on and on and on. The point is, they have a public posture, which is, no, we're partners. We're dealing with this issue. And then they have all this stuff that they are doing. They talk about it amongst themselves in Mexico. So it's time to cast off these official statements and deal with the realities of the things that they say amongst themselves, which I think is completely shocking and contrary to everything they're saying in public.
No, you've nailed it. The subtitle of the book is How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon. They're using it as a weapon for the Reconquista. The book is Invisible Coup. We want it on New York Times #1 for 2 weeks in a row, so we got to buy today and tomorrow. Peter, China, different. China has a strategic goal to become a hegemon, and that is to make the United States not a co-hegemon, not a competing power. All these theories inside the Pentagon and the State Department, these guys want total, complete, and full domination. You can see that in your book of what they're trying to do. Right now, I'm going to have Natalie and Captain Fennell. Is there a coup going on? Is she consolidating power? But in your book, it is a very well thought through strategic plan to take down the United States. Is it not, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. And immigration is a part of that. And Steve, they're using techniques that they tried to use in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government shut down birthright citizenship for Chinese because around 2010, half of all the births in Hong Kong were Chinese nationals who were flying into that country to give birth because Hong Kong had birthright citizenship. So they shut it down because they saw what it was, a subversive effort to gain further influence in that country. And of course, now Hong Kong is all gone. Essentially, they're doing the same thing in the United States. We're obviously bigger than Hong Kong, but the scale is unbelievable. We in the United States have no idea how many birthright citizens are being minted every day because we don't track that data, which in and of itself is shocking. When you get a birth certificate in the United States, it does not list the nationality of the parents. And our federal government says we have no idea how many people are doing this. But the Chinese do. The Chinese government does, and Chinese research firms do. And those numbers are shocking. They say that over the last 13 years, every year, roughly 100,000 Chinese nationals have flown to the United States, given birth to a child in the U.S., got the birthright citizenship, and as soon as the baby was, old enough and capable, they fly back to China where they are being raised. And when they are 18 years old, even though they lived here for a week after they were born, they are U.S. citizens, and they're going to be able to vote. They're going to be able to donate to political campaigns. They're going to be able to apply for, sensitive government jobs, even though they have lived in China their entire life, and they're the children of the Chinese elite. So this is a massive manipulation of our immigration system. I'm hoping that the Supreme Court, when they hear this case, they are going to factor in the research in the book, which points out this is not random stuff where somebody just kind of wanders across the border. They're working a job here for 18 years. They happen to give birth. They're staying here. That's an issue in and of itself. But what China's doing is industrial scale. It's on a massive scale, and it needs to be nipped in the bud. They're doing the same thing, Steve, with the EB-5 visas. Those corrupt visas where you can basically give $1 million. You create jobs allegedly. You get permanent resident status in the United States. That visa program, the EB-5 program, was written by a Chinese spy named Maria Tsai. We now know that she was a spy when she pushed forward and got that bill passed. We know it's dominated by the Chinese. 90% of the people getting EB-5 permanent resident status are Chinese. And we know the reason that they want it. They want it not so much to live in the United States, because very few of them do. They want it because when you get permanent resident status in the United States, you can legally donate to political campaigns. And they're doing it to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, and those donations break 80-20 Democrat-Republican.
Peter Schweizer, the book is Invisible Coup. You're making it visible. New York Times #1 bestseller. Many people are piling into this. Where they go, social media, and your site to get this book and get it today and get one for a friend also. Anybody thinks that you're over the top on what you're saying about the invasion of this country, get this book for them and they will actually agree with you. Peter, where do they go?
You can go to at Peter Schweitzer on Twitter. You can go to thedrilldown.com. That's my podcast. And you can also find me on Facebook, and you can find me at peterschweitzer.com.
Peter, fantastic. Look forward to your testimony. We'll have you on 3 times before that to make sure the audience is fully up to speed. Eric Schmidt, what a great senator. Thank you, Peter. Let's get this book number 1 2 weeks in a row. Everybody's got to read this book. When the Mexican government is responding to questions from Maria Bartiromo and Scheinbaum's trying to defend it by, spinning, you got something serious. Do we have Captain Fennell? Oh, Captain Fennell, can you make sense? We've had different POSO, we've had people from the new federal state, other experts. What's going on in China, because that's going to inform our discussion with Natalie Winters. Is this a coup by the military to try to take out Xi, or is this a Xi consolidation of power? Is Xi on the ropes, or is he more powerful than ever, sir?
Xi is more powerful than ever, and I've been very concerned, and I've expressed it to you offline, that there seems to be a large amount of internet traffic coming to us, telling us that Xi is, isolated, under threat, has no control over the PLA. It's been a coup against him. Others say he was having a coup against the PLA. A year ago, they said the general that Xi just purged was consolidating things for Xi. There are a lot of rumors out there, and if you go back over the last three or 4 years, there's been rumors about Chinese ballistic missile submarines sinking in the East China Sea that turned out to not be true. They told us that Xi had a heart attack or a stroke. That turned out to not be true. And now they're telling us that Xi is, at risk and isolated, and that there's no capability in the PLA, that the PLA will not fight for him. And these are all really wrong rumors that are not based upon fact. We have just seen over the last 5 years, China has increased their flights around Taiwan by 5-fold. They went from over 380 flights in 2020 to 5,700 flights this last year. They're flying across the Taiwan Strait. They never flew across the Taiwan Strait with military aircraft for 60 years. And since 2020, they're flying 1,000 times a year across the strait. They're doing exercises, firing missiles at Taiwan. The PLA Navy is the largest in the world. They have the most anti-ship cruise missiles in the world. Xi reformed the PLA in 2015 from 7 military regions to 5 theater commands. They have an information support force that they didn't have before that supports all the theater commands. They have a joint logistics support force that supports the 5 theater commands, and they're actually expanding their military operations around the world, not just in the Far East, but with the Russians in the Sea of Japan, in the Arctic, in the Mediterranean, down off of South Africa here in the last month. So what we're seeing from all military evidence is that the PLA is on this trajectory. It's going up. There has been no declination in any way, shape, or form over the last 13 years since Xi has been in power. It continues to increase. And we just saw in the last 2 weeks, since all this rumors of this alleged coup, Xi is meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada, the Prime Minister of Finland. He's meeting with the Prime Minister of Uruguay right now. He's going to meet with the Chancellor of Germany next week. So he's meeting with all these leaders. There's been reports of gunfire and shooting in the streets of Beijing. All wild speculation. And I don't want to assert why people are doing this, but I think some people have a hope that things are cracking in China and they're trying to feed this mindset. But the reality is that's not happening, and Xi is in greater control, and the risk to an invasion of Taiwan is greater today than ever before.
Captain, hang on for 1 second. We'll hold you to the break. Natalie Winters.
President President Trump delivered on his promises, but we can't get complacent. None of our America First agenda will be secure until we build the Red Wall. Turning Point PAC is building the Red Wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, key battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. We're funding door knockers who will win the next elections in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Today, we're asking for your immediate support. Donate at tprav.com or scan the QR code now to fund our field operations.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shop. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison. We were prosecuted, persecuted. J6ers have been treated like terrorists.
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Charlie may be gone, but his legacy lives on. In you, in me, in the groundswell of patriotism he ignited nationwide. Now it's up to us to continue the fight for the heart and soul of America in his stead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code to fund Turning Point PAC's grassroots operation. At Turning Point PAC, we're 100% committed to Charlie's big picture vision to build the Red Wall, starting in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Nevada, the three battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. Go to tprav.com or scan the QR code and donate to support Charlie's vision. We can build an impenetrable red wall that will destroy the Democrats' plans and pave the way to victory for America First candidates in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Your gift helps us deploy door knockers, chase ballots, and ramp up our grassroots efforts for the fight ahead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code now to help us win in key battleground states.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
I'm a J6er, and I spent 3 months in jail and about a year in prison.
I spent 4 years out of an 18-year sentence in prison.
J6ers have been smeared and defamed by the media, persecuted by the government, and treated like terrorists.
In reality, J6ers are patriotic men and women, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers from all walks of life.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, two special offers for the War Room Posse. Number one, HomeTitleLock.com. Every dream you've ever had is in that home of yours. And remember, for this younger generation, the average age of first-time buyers is now 40 years old. If you're lucky enough to own a home, make sure that no one, because of the rudimentary systems about these titles, can get into it, whether cyber, AI, rogue lawyer, rogue accountant, rogue relative. They give you a free check. HomeTitleLock.com. 14 days, you'll get to see their $1 million triple lock protection. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Steve. Talk to Natalie Dominguez and the team today. Find out all about the service. Take away the angst and the anxiety of some hard money lender gets into your title. Take out a second of $50,000 or $100,000 you got to pay off those high interest rates, and they don't want to hear your tale of woe. Also, Tax Network USA. Right now, you know the IRS is in a bond. What they think you owe versus what you think you owe. I'm sure there's a gap. You get a free assessment today. If you call 800-958-1000, tell them you're a member of the War Room Posse, that Steve Bannon sent you. You get a free analysis of exactly what your tax dilemma is. They've solved $1 billion worth of problems. There is nothing you've done in taxes that they haven't heard about before. So call them up. It's free. 800-958-1000. Tell them your tale of woe and get a free assessment. Or text and go to tnusa.com and go there today. Natalie Winters, by the way, when Peter Schweitzer told me, Natalie, that he thinks you're the single best investigator into things on the Chinese Communist Party, that's a pretty high compliment coming from a guy that's had back-to-back New York Times #1 bestsellers about the Chinese Communist Party. But Peter knows your diligence and reads your stuffs and studies it like every China hand does. You just had Captain Fennell, who is, former senior naval intelligence out in the Pacific Fleet, and really gave up his career to warn the nation during the Obama presidency about the rise of the Chinese military, and particularly the Chinese Navy, and what dilemma that was going to put us into in Taiwan, Eastern Europe, Eastern Asia, Taiwan Straits, South China Sea, East China Sea, plus the Pacific Islands that are American territories. You've been doing a lot of independent research recently. I know you went to Asia and just came back again for the second time to Japan. Jim, when Captain Fennell was walking through it, didn't talk about the UK. I think one of the most humiliating things I've ever seen is Starmer going over there. I think it was last week. And what it showed me is where I was talking to the captain about the long memory of the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party. This ritual humiliation of Starmer while he was kowtowing shows you they have not forgotten the Opium War. They have not forgotten what happened around Hong Kong. They have not forgotten how they thought they had to kowtow to the British Empire. Ma'am, you've been doing a lot of research. Talk to me first about the string of meetings that she's had with these foreign leaders over the last couple of weeks.
Well, look, I think we're in an era of global fealty to China, and you're seeing that on full display right now. And I think the past that you're discussing, which is certainly informing the present, certainly scary, but I think what's even more concerning is really the Chinese Communist Party's conception of the future. You heard it from Mark Carney himself, right? This concept of the new world order, that's something we've been talking about for a while, whereby China is the new sort of global hegemon, replacing the United States. And I think that when you see what's going on, particularly with the Central Military Commission and the escalation of things in Taiwan, I think it's fair to say that's going to become the sort of kinetic flashpoint for all of the diplomatic meetings that you're seeing going on. I think there's 6 high-level, government president-to-president meeting already for 2026, like Captain Fennell said, with the Uruguayan leader there right now. But I think what's so important to understand about the changes on the CMC, which of course follows, significant overhaul. Basically, everybody is gone now. The second in command, not just on the CMC, but to Xi Jinping being ousted. I think there's sort of this common misconception that it's the older generals who are really hostile and want to move on Taiwan, when in reality, it's the younger ones, particularly those that we've seen be appointed to be commanders sort of in the Eastern Theater, obviously more relevant to Taiwan, but those are the people who, not just because they have this sort of fealty and almost this weird, in the most traditional sense, political correctness, where they don't want to madden Xi Jinping, they don't feel like they can stand up to him. Whereas the old guard is a little more hesitant. You even saw that with the second in command, who was just relieved or is being investigated now. He was sort of more on the 2035 timeline for potentially being ready for a Taiwan invasion, as opposed to the more aggressive 2027 version. I also think it's worth noting too that the individual who was just ousted, he was sort of the point person, at least for a while under Joe Biden, having sort of, back channel discussions, at least military to military comms, related to Taiwan, related to a host of issues. And I think that dynamic is going to be very interesting to watch in the shakeup, because essentially what you're going to see is that everybody over there, no one is going to want to converse with the United States, converse with Taiwan, converse with the West, right? Because the guy who was basically the point person on doing that was ousted, not necessarily for doing that, but I think it sets a really concerning cascade effect. I also would point to, I think what you saw go on in Venezuela, obviously the reporting talking about how, the Chinese air defense systems there failed. That's pretty damning for the Chinese, obviously. They're going to recalibrate after that. So I think that's why you've seen such a significant overhaul too. And I think the most important thing to understand the internal dynamics there is that the only thing that Xi Jinping fears is really a military coup, which I think you could see happen if a Taiwan invasion were to actually occur, but more importantly, to drag on in sort of a Russia-style invasion. So I think those are the relevant dynamics at play. But I also think something that the audience really needs to stay ahead of the curve on. Of course, Western media is not going to cover it. They actually think that everything that's going on at the CMC is good for Taiwan. I would say Taiwan should be nervous. But that is what's going on with the KMT and the Chinese Communist Party. The KMT being the opposition to the DPP, which favors a much stronger defense, not just subsidized by America, but by Taiwan itself, against the Chinese Communist Party. They're pushing a special defense budget right now, around $40 billion US. That the KMT, which are basically, let's just call them what they are, the CCP over in Taiwan, are desperately trying to kill. And really an affront to the Taiwanese people. They are, I think it's concluding shortly, but making really a concerning 3-day delegation trip visit to the mainland, to Beijing, meeting with Chinese Communist Party officials, particularly on the Taiwan desk, visiting Tsinghua University, doing, the whole pomp and circumstance, the whole tour over there, with the vice chairman of the party and about 40 scholars from the think tank that is affiliated with the party there. This, of course, being a precursor to having the actual chairman of the party go over there, though, of course, the KMT had to do a lot of favors to the Chinese Communist Party to even get this meeting in the first place. But this, I think, is really concerning. Obviously, we focus on the sort of hybrid warfare, the gray zone stuff, the political infiltration. But this is pretty in your face, right? Obviously, the KMT is pretty hollowed out by the Chinese Communist Party. But the kowtowing and the groveling, particularly over this special defense budget. Obviously, the Trump administration, allotted billions of dollars to Taiwan, but Taiwan themselves are focusing on, particularly through the legislative yuan, trying to get the $40 billion passed. The KMT, so that's the CCP, proxy party, has 52 seats. The DPP has 51, and then the TPP has about 8 seats. So that's where you have more wiggle room with that party. But what you're seeing really is the Chinese Communist Party, by all means necessary, trying to sabotage this special defense budget because it's so instrumental to Taiwan's defense, but also that you've seen signaling from the United States and President Trump that they support it too. So I think all of these things together show you that Xi Jinping is extremely emboldened, and anybody who's saying otherwise, that's just nonsense talk. I've been hearing China's going to collapse for decades now, before I was ever born. That's not quite true, and rhetoric like that I think is pretty dangerous.
Natalie, hang on. Amazing report. Captain Fennell, does everything Natalie's saying, everything that you've been saying, is she still focused? Are we still on the path to a potential invasion of Taiwan in 27 or 28, given everything that you see right now and weighing, measuring everything that Natalie's talking about?
Well, Natalie's analysis is spot on. I concur with what she said. Since 2012, I have been talking about the decade of concern. If you go back and relive Hu Jintao, the previous leader, and Xi Jinping when he took over, they ordered the PLA to have the capability to take Taiwan as early as 2020. And I believe that the latest date is around 2030. Then when Admiral Davidson left PACOM, when he retired, he came out and mentioned that there was this 2027 timeline based on the 100th anniversary of the PLA. It could be in 2027, but I guarantee you that Xi understands that in order to have this ceremony in Beijing on 1 October 2049, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, that whoever that paramount leader is, they have to be able to say that they have restored China. They have taken all that they claim is theirs, the South China Sea, Taiwan, the Senkakus, the Ryukyus, disputed territories with India, territories with Mongolia possibly, even with Korea and Russia. They have to restore all that into their ownership. And the one that they cannot get right now has been Taiwan. And they prefer not to use force, but both Hu Jintao and I believe Jiang Zemin, but we know Hu Jintao ordered the PLA, and we know Xi ordered the PLA to be ready to take Taiwan as early as 2020. And they know that they can't use military force much past 2030 and expect the world to forget what they do and then come back to Beijing and have a big celebration like they did in the 2008 Summer Olympics when the world came and watched the opening ceremony like George Bush did with his jacket off and his sweat stains under his armpits in the Bird's Nest Stadium. So we're in this most critical time right now, the next 3-4 years, where Xi is measuring and knows that he has to either get Taiwan to buckle. And good on Natalie for mentioning the KMT is over in China right now. So he's working beneath the scenes to try to break Taiwan's will down. But if he doesn't get that through non-kinetic means, he has prepared the military to take action. And what he has been doing over this last 2 years is systematically, like a biathlete, shooting the targets in the target zone, those Central Military Commission members. He's taken them out one by one, all the resistors. And now what he has, as Natalie correctly mentioned, a younger generation of officers who's very, very keen on taking back what they've been told their whole lives is that Taiwan is Chinese territory, and they want to take it. Look at the Minister of Defense, Admiral Don Young. He is an admiral, the first time they've ever had an admiral in charge of the Ministry of Defense. Many people poo-poo it. He's not a member of the CMC right now, but Admiral Dong's background is that he is someone that was in charge of the Eastern Theater Command, the East Sea Command, that was responsible, and they formed their first joint command back in over 15 years ago to take Taiwan. So he is intimately involved with planning to take Taiwan, and he is in charge of the Ministry of Defense. And the Western China watchers say, well, he has no power, no influence, because he's not a CMC member. He's just a diplomatic guy, and he only does diplomatic issues. I disagree with that, and I think that there's a lot of evidence that suggests that they are on this path, and we keep in the West deflating that threat. And what it does is it tells Congress, oh, you don't really have to pass these bills that are necessary to retransform the U.S. military. And President Trump got it. You know, on this issue of the purges, what did the president say yesterday on Air Force One when asked about it? The man in the world that's got the most intelligence is Donald Trump. And what did he say? He said, Xi is still the boss. He's still the man.
Captain Fennell, thank you very much. I guess we're going to see some writings of yours up on American greatness. We'll look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Natalie's going to stick around. Short commercial break. Back in the War Room in a moment.
President Trump delivered on his promises, but we can't get complacent. None of our America First agenda will be secure until we build the Red Wall. Turning Point PAC is building the Red Wall in Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, key battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. We're funding door knockers who will win the next elections in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Today, we're asking for your immediate support. Donate at tprav.com or scan the QR code now to fund our field operations.
Hey folks, it's your friend John Rich. I co-founded Old Glory Bank because we heard too many stories about people getting canceled by their bank because they didn't agree with their politics. The government wanted to know where you shopped. If you bought a Bible or you shopped at a sporting goods store, you're probably on a list. We created Old Glory Bank because America needed a bank that would protect their privacy and security. Exercising your constitutional rights is not a criminal activity, and neither is loving your country. At Old Glory Bank, we stand with you.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
About a year in prison. We were prosecuted, persecuted. J6ers have been treated like terrorists,
And we need your help.
Stand in the Gap was founded to stand in the gap for J6ers working to rebuild their lives after being incarcerated.
For just $10 or more, you can help these patriots get back on their feet again. Every dollar you give is being matched up to $50,000. Go now to j6support.com and donate today. Charlie may be gone, but his legacy lives on. In you, in me, in the groundswell of patriotism he ignited nationwide. Now it's up to us to continue the fight for the heart and soul of America. In his stead, visit tprav.com or scan the QR code to fund Turning Point PAC's grassroots operation. At Turning Point PAC, we're 100% committed to Charlie's big picture vision to build the Red Wall, starting in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Nevada, the three battleground states where conservatives outnumber Democrats. Go to tprav.com or scan the QR code and donate to support Charlie. Charlie's vision, we can build an impenetrable red wall that will destroy the Democrats' plans and pave the way to victory for America First candidates in 2026, 2028, and beyond. Your gift helps us deploy door knockers, chase ballots, and ramp up our grassroots efforts for the fight ahead. Visit tprav.com or scan the QR code now to help us win in key battleground states.
I'm a J6er. I spent 1,143 days in prison.
I'm a J6er, and I spent 3 months in jail and about a year in prison.
I spent 4 years out of an 18-year sentence in prison.
J6ers have been smeared and defamed by the media, persecuted by the government, and treated like terrorists.
In reality, J6ers are patriotic men and women, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers from all walks.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Natalie is one of our top, if not the top researcher on the Chinese Communist Party and its war against the United States. Unrestricted warfare. Does Peter Schweizer's book, Invisible Coup, show the actions of Xi and his regime are an active, unrestricted warfare within the United States, ma'am?
Is that a rhetorical question? I think, of course, we've been documenting this for years, but I also think I would use this, final minute to also say that it's not just the Chinese Communist Party. The United States is also really good right now at shooting itself in the foot, right? China's undergoing mass scale mobilization, military civil fusion, you name it, right? Our defense primes are so behind on producing numbers that still would put us behind the rate of Chinese buildup, that it's despicable. It's a shame, right? It really is managed decline, but it's accelerated decline. You see it in that. You see it in the rare earth stuff. And I don't understand still why we're giving chips, why we're giving these critical technologies to a country that has explicitly said that they are trying to destroy us and replace us. And we're seeing that on full display right now. And that's very kind of Peter to say that. I remember growing up reading his books. He's a wonderful researcher, and I'm going to have a story coming out soon talking about how there's now Chinese Communist Party linked groups that are getting in on the take when it comes to defunding ICE.
Wow. Natalie, your Substack, social media, your coordinates, where do people go, ma'am?
nataliegwinters.substack.com, Natalie G. Winters on all platforms. You can see the latest story. If you can believe it, the WHO did a pandemic simulation eerily similar to the lockdowns that we're seeing right now happen across Southeast Asia just last December. So go read that one.
Natalie Winters, amazing. As always, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
The star researcher on tough topics, really in our country today, just extraordinary young woman. Chad Mizell. So Chad Mizell, he came on the show the other day, and man, Andy McCarthy, who's really a Trump derangement syndrome, he went off. You made this case that, hey, we're looking for people. I said, hey, look, the top law firms, the Federal Society, a lot of groups have put a ban on working at Main Justice for President Trump's only reason. One of the reasons, besides blue slips, they only got 14 of the 94 U.S. attorneys. You said you're working on a project now to make sure people have careers after they work. He went off on you and the whole thing that, oh, we're not looking for the best and the brightest. We're not looking for Democrats. We're not looking for independents. This is all just this is another move of fascism, and Chad Mizell is off base. Now, you were former chief of staff over Main Justice. Just take a couple of minutes, explain to Andy McCarthy what you in fact are doing.
Steve, thanks so much for having me again. It's a shame I have to do this, but let me first start with the Constitution of the United States, because Andy clearly doesn't understand that. It says in Article 2, all executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. Unlike some of the other articles, this one vests all power in a single person. That means any time an executive branch officer is using executive power, an AUSA indicting somebody, charging someone, convicting somebody, bringing criminal evidence against somebody, all of that is executive power. That's included. That means if the president doesn't like how you're using his executive power, he's free to tell you, stop. Use it in a different way. And the way he communicates that to all of us is via executive orders. So if you are not on board with the president's agenda, if you're not on board with the executive orders, he is free to say, you're not allowed to use my executive power. And in fact, I don't want you in my government. And Steve, that's exactly what we were able to do at at DOJ. You know, my job as chief of staff, working with Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, was to try to root out a lot of this stuff. And we got immediately to work. On day one, we dismissed about 100 people who we thought were working against Donald J. Trump. Over the course of the next several months, thousands of people from DOJ who honestly looked themselves in the mirror and said, we cannot enforce this policy, they left. And Steve, I have a lot of respect for them because that's how government should work. It should work that if you can't follow the wishes of the duly enacted or the duly elected president of the United States, then you need to leave. And all we're looking for now are people who want to follow his agenda, who actually want to see law enforcement carried out in the United States and who are looking forward to doing that and want to be part of the team.
Chad, where do people go for your social media? Because this fight is only going to heat up. Because of the intensity we get the right people in there to make sure that people in there want to follow the president's instructions. So where do people go on your social media? Because I can tell you, Andy McCarthy is not going to back off this. I know you're not, and we want to make sure we stay current. So where do folks go?
And they can message me on X. It's Chad_Mizell, Chad_Mizelle. And Steve, if I can give one point of like really positive news, I've received hundreds and hundreds of inquiries already. I mean, really, really good essays. We're talking top law schools, top law firms, top prosecutors all over the country reaching out to me. This is incredible.
This is amazing. We're going to push this clip out hard. We know there's tons of people that want to sign up. They just need to know how they do it. Chad, great work. Keep fighting. Appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, Steve.
My grandpa Rose would have been proud of me.
Please get that clip from Chad and let's push it out hard. They've already had hundreds
boys
of people
got some lungs.
respond, and nothing could be more important for us right now in taking on the deep state and effectuating President Trump's policies than making sure we get at Main Justice and these U.S. attorneys a full team. Mike Lindell, we'll talk about your governor run tonight and off, but in the rest of the week. The audience right now wants to know, what are the deals? Give me a deal to kick off the week.
Yeah, you guys, this is the best deal we've ever had on our mattress toppers and our beds. The mattress toppers are, I've developed these myself or helped develop them. They actually give you quality sleep. The queen size alone has over 10,000 pressure points. Their comfort supports. You guys are as low as $99.98. We have our mattresses free shipping right to your front door. We have our bed frames. We have our mattress comforters. We have our mattress pad. It's all on sale at mypillow.com/war room. You guys have made in the USA, the beds, the mattress right to your front door, and the sleep is about temperature and pressure points. We've got it all covered with MyPillow's technology. And the free shipping, you guys check it out. The blankets, you guys, once they're gone, as low as $25. The crosses are in, the women's crosses are back in stock. Made in the USA, get those. Free shipping on your entire order. Promo code War Room, and my operators love hearing from you. My call center, 800-873-1062, 800-873-1062. Promo code War Room. Remember, free shipping, 10-year warranty on everything. We made it to last, and we made it to work.
Mike, thank you. We'll see you this afternoon, sir. The Charlie Kirk Show is next. Post those after that. We're back at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be live in the world. See you then.
Oh, now this guy's going that way. Now I'm getting the lay of the land.
Valets can be a big test for a young homeowner turning into their parents.
There's an overflow lot somewhere in the vicinity.
If the garage is full, they go to the auxiliary.
He said if the garage is full, they go to the overflow lot.
I heard him. I was right here. Let's just stand quietly.
I bet you guys have driven some great cars, huh?
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
I think you might have brought the wrong car. We had the red convertible.
President Trump
And why have we sold so many? Because they actually work.
Remember, the patented fill you can adjust to your exact individual needs regardless of your sleep position. They stay cool, you can throw them right in the washer and dryer, and they come out beautiful. And they have a 10-year warranty. Our classic collection goes from our Go Anywhere size My Pillow, the standard size My Pillow, queen size My Pillow, king size My Pillows, all the way up to our body pillows. So go to mypillow.com or call 800-975-4719. Use promo code FLASH to take advantage of our classic collection sale. You get our body pillows for just $39.98. Our Go Anywhere pillows only $12.98. King size My Pillows $29.98. Queen size $24.98. And standard My Pillows only $19.98. Thank you and God bless.
This is the Flashpoint Television Network.
I hope they make it here. Here in Israel, everyone is holding their breath as we wait to see if and when the United States military will launch punitive attacks on Iran's Ayatollah regime. The death toll from the regime's violent crackdown on protests, which began in late December and escalated for several weeks before being crushed, just keeps rising, and with it, the chances of punitive American action. Meanwhile, Israel continues hitting Hezbollah targets both south and north of the Litani River in the hope of convincing them to stay out of the battle with Iran. In Gaza, Hamas is steadfastly refusing to disarm, and Israelis continue to absorb more bad economic news. All this and more is just ahead on this week's edition of BFI News. Last Sunday, Time magazine published a report that cited sources in Iran's health ministry who said that on January 8th and 9th, shortly after the internet blackout in Iran started, security forces massively stepped up their repression of protesters. In those 2 days alone, 48 hours, the sources estimated that more than 30,000 Iranians lost their lives. Now, I'm inclined to take this estimate very seriously because it tracks with other reports of, for instance, security forces opening up on tightly packed crowds with heavy machine guns. If you've never served in the military, you might not know this, but a bullet fired from a heavy machine gun can penetrate all the way through a large tree and keep going when it exits out the other side. Now, without getting too graphic here, just take a moment to consider what hundreds of such bullets could do if they were fired at a large, densely packed crowd of people. Each of those hundreds of bullets would be dangerous to not just one or two people, but several. This scenario is reported to have played out in dozens of locations all over Iran. So if you think about that, it's not too difficult to imagine that the estimates of over 40,000 fatalities from the regime's actions on the 8th and 9th of January are very plausible. Adding to the plausibility of these numbers, the Time magazine report also spoke of hospitals being overwhelmed with a massive number of people arriving for treatment. However, there have also been reports that many of the security forces in different cities throughout Iran refused to fire on protesters, so the regime brought in Shiite militias from Iraq and elsewhere around the region to do it instead. Several members of the security forces who refused orders to fire on protesters have also reportedly been arrested, and some have already been executed. It is impossible to get hard numbers about casualties, and we'll probably never know the total body count. Alongside the tens of thousands who lost their lives on the street, many more were wounded and most probably won't recover. Some estimate up to 300,000 were wounded. Many more will perish in Iran's notorious prison system, some succumbing to torture, others to starvation and disease, and some being executed. Once again, we'll probably never know the total body number of casualties. Now, I'm going to switch to commentary mode for a moment because there's something about all this that really bothers me. Beyond the moral outrage we all naturally feel when we see a totalitarian regime massacring its own unarmed civilian population like this, But whatever the actual body count in this uprising that has now for the time being been crushed, I think it's safe to say that the numbers are at least comparable to the numbers of those who lost their lives in over 2 years of fighting between the IDF and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. However, what Hamas did against Israel and Israel did against Hamas, Israel was defending itself, whereas in Iran it's genocide. Lay aside for a moment all the mitigating circumstances and arguments about who was a civilian, who was a combatant, who is reporting these numbers, and so on and so forth. Just the sheer number of people who lost their lives in these two situations is at least comparable. So why isn't anyone protesting against the Ayatollah regime the way they did against Israel? Where is the outrage from the social media influencers or legacy media, university professors, self-described human rights activists, and all the rest? I'm sure some people will dismiss this question as an example of whataboutism. But you know what? I think whataboutism is somewhat legitimate. If someone takes a stand or sets a standard, that standard must apply to everyone in every situation equally, or it's not valid. If someone wants to say that they oppose Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip because they think it amounts to genocide, but they ignore the Iranian regime's slaughter of its own people in 48 hours in comparable numbers to how many lost their lives in this so-called genocide, that's hypocrisy. In fact, it's not just hypocrisy or even a double standard, it is a monstrously evil injustice. As an Israeli, a Jew, a follower of Yeshua, and even just as a human being, I take that very personally, and I think it gives Israelis full permission to ignore all these so-called human rights activists who are always criticizing us. On that note, to be fair, there were a handful of street demonstrations in front of Iranian embassies and consulates in capital cities of several European countries, and there have even been some very strong statements against the regime from the United Nations. Furthermore, Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, no friends of Israel lately, have consistently condemned the Ayatollah regime for its many crimes against humanity over the years, and they have been very vocal in the last few weeks as the crackdown on these protests escalated. But there has been nothing like the wall-to-wall outrage and condemnation that came as Israel fought a war of necessity and defense against Hamas in Gaza. That is not to even mention the deafening silence from all these self-described human rights activists and organizations amidst the ongoing genocide against Christians in Nigeria and the ongoing atrocities in Sudan, which have resulted in a death count in the hundreds of thousands, etc. I could go on for a very long time listing things that these folks are ignoring because they're too busy obsessing about Israel. If you're watching this and you're one of those people who claim to care about injustice in this world and war crimes and human rights violations and so on, you should take a moment to consider what's motivating you. What's motivating the people and organizations you're supporting? Is it really concern about injustice and human rights and all that, or is it something else? I'll say no more about this. Now, to get back into the news, U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered a large deployment of U.S. military power to the region, including the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Battle Group, which includes the carrier itself with its squadrons of F-35's incredible flights, F-18s, and all the rest. It also includes the carrier's destroyer escorts, which carry Tomahawk cruise missiles that can be used to join any strike on land targets inside Iran, as well as defend the carrier against any possible counterattack. Submarines armed with hundreds more Tomahawk cruise missiles are also poised to add their offensive punch to any attack. Squadrons of land-based F-15s and A-10 ground attack aircraft have also been deployed to American bases in the region, along with refueling aircraft, electronic warfare aircraft, and any other assets. Now, this also includes batteries of THAAD and Patriot air defense systems, which have been deployed to be ready to knock down any weapons that Iran might launch at Israel or the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia or other parts of the Persian Gulf in retaliation for an American strike, as they're threatening to do so. Now, I'm sure I don't have to tell you all this, but a massive buildup of American firepower, which has been backed up by regional deployments of British and French forces as well, is not cheap. And there's certainly plenty of other things the United States, Britain, and France need to spend money on these days. So I don't think anyone should be under any illusions right now about what's to happen next. But of course, there are some who are not just clinging to illusions, they're downright delusional. And that, of course, is the Iranian regime. They're responding to the growing American military presence in the region by making ridiculous rhetorical threats about how they don't want to fight, but they're ready to win one if someone else starts it. But there's one voice on Iran's side which seems to be facing reality, and his name is Mohammed al-Baghdadi, a leader in the Houthi terror proxy Iran sponsors in Yemen. He said this week that Iran has the right to preemptively attack the Americans, and if they do, it will reduce the effects of the inevitable U.S. attack. But, he added, if Iran, quote, delays the impact of the attack, will be more painful, devastating, and destructive. It's too bad for everyone's sake that there are not a few more men like this in Iran's camp, men who don't believe in their own rhetoric and tough talk, but who soberly and honestly face the facts and draw the correct conclusions. Although I hope al-Baghdadi's advice isn't acted upon, I have to admit that it's by far the most intelligent thing any of these guys have said this week. For their part, the IDF is signaling that it is on alert and fully prepared to face whatever might come in the days ahead, including the possibility of renewed conflict in the north, if Hezbollah makes good on its endless threats to attack Israel if the U.S. attacks Iran. The IDF is also alert to the possibility that the Houthis, where they've been, in Yemen could renew their ballistic missile launches against Israel. Those are the big threats, but there are other Iranian proxies in the region, principally the Shiite militias Iran sponsors in Iraq, who recently assisted the regime in putting down the protesters and could also decide at this time to turn their weapons on us. I urge you to join me in praying for the safety of everyone who is in harm's way in this situation. That includes everyone here in Israel and all the American, British, French, and other allied service members who are deployed in this region. Now, by the time you see this video, hostilities might already be underway. I am no military expert, but I don't think they'll last very long, and there's no doubt how they'll end. The only questions are about how many lives will be lost, how much damage will be done, and how much money it will cost, and how long it will take to rebuild everything that's been destroyed, not only in Iran, but in the entire region. Now, another thing you don't have to wonder about is whether or not we here at Vision for Israel will continue to place bomb safety shelters in Israeli communities to protect residents from missile attacks. You also don't have to wonder if we'll continue to support emergency medical response teams, firefighters, the police and civilian security units, and anyone else who needs equipment, supplies, and resources to do their job of protecting and caring for the people of Israel. So please visit our website, visionforisrael.com, and click on the Projects tab to learn more. You can also watch this short video to see how you can be part of this ongoing project. It is necessary. We must protect the people of Israel. After October 7th, 2023, which was considered the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, security teams were devastated along the southern border of Israel. From October 8th onwards, also Hezbollah in Lebanon, a terror group, also attacked in the northern part of Israel. Security teams turned to Vision for Israel for extra aid and help, and many of the items that we provided were ceramic vests for security teams to avoid bullet wounds as well as shrapnel wounds. We also needed to provide proper helmets. Most of these security teams had outdated equipment that hadn't been replaced in decades. In addition to that, there was a request for medic bags and defibrillators and for all sorts of medical disposables that were needed. Then as a result of these rocket attacks, also fires were erupting, and so we were requested to provide firefighting equipment and generators and protective clothing in order to put out these fires. And so Vision for Israel is very happy to come alongside the civilian security teams, the community security teams. We even bought a new police vehicle for one of the southern cities and dedicated it together with the mayor. It was in the city of Sderot, which was badly hit during the first days of the war. And the requests keep coming in, and we will continue to keep providing. A moment ago, I mentioned the IDF's operations on the northern border to guard against the possibility that Hezbollah will attack Israel in the event of an American attack in Iran.
I just want to get ready.
Take that to mean that the IDF is sitting on the border in their tanks.
I noticed that.
On the contrary, the IDF is
on the where the stereo radio is.
The Air Force is launching regular strikes on
It's up there, or either that's on the whatever.
Hezbollah training facilities, individual terror operatives, and more.
Well, just put it on there for a
Military
second.
planners call active defense.
I can tell I have to do this first.
Getting
Before I get
out
ready.
ahead of the problem. The point is the IDF is trying to send a warning to Hezbollah that it knows where all the weapons, ammunition, fighters, and equipment Hezbollah is thinking about using to attack us, and it's able to hit them almost at will.
Here comes Crispy. It ain't gonna come until the 7th of February, it said.
Take the warning, then these limited strikes the IDF is carrying out now will help to minimize the effectiveness of any Hezbollah attack. It's also relevant to mention in this context that the Israeli Ministry of Tourism is making plans to evacuate the tens of thousands of foreign tourists who are in Israel this week in the event of hostilities. In recent days, several European airlines have suspended or reduced flights in and out of Israel, as well as Jordan and other countries, as the possibility of an American attack on Iran loom. Don't worry, my tourist friends. Let's hope any disruption will be short, and as Israel's tourism ministry is on life support right now, and the hundreds of thousands of people who work in this industry, they need also a lot of help. On that subject, the Israeli economy is a very mixed bag as we move further into the new year of 2026. There have been some large exits of Israeli startups already in the month of January. But to be very honest, that sort of thing only helps a small number of people. The numbers from the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange also look good in the media reports about them, but at ground level, many Israeli households are struggling, and some are slipping below the water. That's why here at Vision for Israel, we're continuing to provide assistance to families and communities under strain. So please visit our website again, visionforisrael.com, and click on the Projects tab to see how you can help. And please also watch this short video about our projects.
we go out to the distributions, we just are enjoying to see the people when they come to us and they are so grateful. It's one thing to look at lists of names and all the people coming, but when we see them and when they come and when they sit there and then they meet us, we get to talk to them. We get to learn about their families and their needs beyond what we're giving them. That is the greatest expression of our faith in God and who Yeshua is for us, because if it wasn't for him being the provider for this organization, we wouldn't have what we have to give out. And the greatest of this is to give it with love. And that is our logo. That is our motto, to do it joyfully, to do it with love. We always like when we come together, the staff, make sure that when you go, you're cheering them up. It's not just the giving of the voucher, it's the giving of the spirit, to lift them up spiritually, to let them know that there are people behind them, that the support that we give is not just money, but it's much more than that. And you know, that is our prayer, is for the spiritual and the physical restoration for our people.
We've now provided over 300,000 brand new school packs with their supplies inside for school children of all ages, but particularly the first and second grades. I just love it when we distribute and when a little child comes up and just hugs you on the leg or gives you a big hug and says thank you. And sometimes they may even have a runny nose. I think it's like one of the cutest things. It melts my heart so much. And I'm going, wow, I hope that when they grow up to be an adult and maybe they've been through the army and university and they have a profession, maybe that memory will stay with them for all those years and decades. Now, let's take a look at what's going on in Syria before moving on to Gaza, where some big news broke even as the VFI news team was in the process of preparing this report. The al-Jolani regime in Syria has moved aggressively in recent days to consolidate power in the northeast corner of the country, essentially squashing the Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces, which had maintained a semi-autonomous enclave there for the last few years. This project was carried out with the approval and assistance of you-know-who, Turkey, which doesn't want the Kurds living in southeastern Turkey to get the idea that they could have something similar. America has also given a quiet nod of approval to this consolidation, despite the fact that the SDF was an American ally in the battle against ISIS and had been guarding several prison camps containing thousands of ISIS terrorists and their dependents. There are reports that large numbers of people escaped from these camps, and that's a mess that might take a great deal of effort to clean up. But the regime says it's taken control of these camps and that most of the prisoners are accounted for. Now, I'm not sure we should take them at their word, but at this point, there's not much more to say about this. We'll just have to keep an eye out open and see if ISIS makes a comeback in Syria. But for now, with the SDF neutralized, there is some concern in Israel that the regime will once again turn its attention to the Druze in Suwaida province south of Damascus. Now, Israel has given this population something that resembles an unofficial protectorate status, and the IDF is also continuing to deploy units on the Golan Heights and in the buffer zone, which is technically Syrian territory. This is a delicate situation, and Turkey is playing a deeply unhelpful role in it. Sadly, the Trump administration in the United States also seems ready to turn a blind eye to the al-Jolani regime's bad behavior because of an overriding interest in stabilizing Syria, which will, among other things, allow millions of Syrian refugees living in Turkey and Europe to return home. Now, it's unclear how many of these battered and traumatized people who fled the Syrian civil war starting way back in 2011 even want to go back at this point. But whether they want to or not, that's what the governments of Turkey, Germany, and other European nations, which have been hosting them for most of the last decade, want to happen. And they're ready to make some pretty awful moral and ethical compromises to see that happen. It's a very, very sad situation. And it's also very deeply frustrating. I have a great love for the Druze people, by the way. But there's no way getting away from the obvious fact that al-Jolani has been given almost a blank check to do whatever he has to do in Syria to keep the country from becoming another failed state in the Middle East. In the deeply depressing calculus of international relations in this season of history we find ourselves in, al-Jolani's harsh administration of Syria might be the best of the lousy options that were
Let's go.
from. Now, speaking of lousy options, our next topic is the Gaza Strip. And we're going to start this segment with some good news because if you're still watching this report, I'm sure you could use some. On Monday evening, the news broke that the remains of the last of the hostages who were kidnapped into Gaza on October 7, 2023, Ran Gavili, had been located and would soon be brought back to Israel for a dignified burial. This will hopefully give Ron's family some closure, and it also brings a very painful and difficult chapter of modern Israeli history to an end. It also removes an obstacle to moving to Phase B of President Trump's ceasefire plan for the Gaza Strip. This phase is meant to include Hamas disarming and handing over civil administration of the civilian population to a technocratic committee, including representatives of the Palestinian Authority. Hamas has, in fairness, made some statements about being ready to follow through on the second part of this plan, but regarding its weapons, it is steadfastly refusing to disarm. Now, President Trump has said recently that Hamas will disarm or it will be annihilated. With all due respect, I'm not sure how seriously we should take that kind of rhetoric at this point. What is beyond dispute is that the IDF remains deployed on the Yellow Line, which bisects Gaza almost exactly in half from north to south, with the strategic city of Rafah or Rafah included in the area under IDF control. This is important because this week the decision was made that the Rafah crossing will be open for limited foot traffic going in both directions. This is one of those notorious confidence-building measures that always seem to just make everything more complicated and difficult, but one can hope that this time things will be different. We certainly need some kind of breakthrough in this situation because with the return of Ran Gavili's remains, Israel no longer has any pretext whatsoever to not move on to Phase B of the ceasefire plan. However, Israeli officials have been quick to declare that the first phase of Phase B must be the disarmament of Hamas, which, as I said before, they refuse to do before we can talk about reconstruction west of the Yellow Line. On that note, the United Arab Emirates has tabled a proposal this week to spend billions of dollars renovating the city of Rafah, building 100,000 apartments for families to move into, and otherwise fixing it up. Let's hope all this amazing vision can be realized because it would go a long way towards solving some of the problems we're facing in the Gaza Strip. Now, we're almost out of time for this week's report, so I'm just going to briefly go over some other big stories from Israel this week, starting with the ongoing drama in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, over the issue of ultra-Orthodox enlistment in the IDF, or lack of. The ongoing maneuvers over this issue in the Knesset, Israel's parliament, have once again brought us to the possibility of early elections. To that point, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, whose party is projected to not even pass the electoral threshold in the next election, is saying the time has come for this Knesset to be dissolved and move into new elections because the budget is unlikely to pass anyways. He might be right, and that doesn't happen very often. I could say a lot more about that, but I'll leave it here for right now. We're almost out of time for this week's report, and I want to continue the tradition of ending with some good news, so here it is. The Pentagon published the Trump administration's National Defense Strategy document for 2026 this week, and it included some very warm words about Israel. And where I'm sitting, it's very cold. Specifically, it stated that Israel has long demonstrated that it is willing and able to defend itself with critical but limited support from the United States. Israel is a model ally, and we now have an opportunity to further empower it to defend itself and advance our shared interests, building on President Trump's historic efforts to achieve peace in the Middle East. The document has some much less kind things to say about many of Washington's other traditional allies, which makes these positive comments about Israel
right over there by that lamp there.
With that, I'm Barry Siegel, and this has been another edition of BFI News from
That's
Israel.
what I'm talking
So
about.
shalom,
Where that
shalom.
lamp
I'll
is.
see you next week. God bless you from the Middle East.
The War Room is calling.
Charlie's going to be
Join
going
the
off in
Flashpoint War Room,
Friday
a powerful
on the
community of
Friday.
believers standing together
If it
in
ain't
prayer,
bad
unity,
Friday.
and bold support. Get exclusive updates on what God is doing right now through this movement. Stand in faith, stand for truth, and stand with Flashpoint as we listen to what God is doing in this season. Whether you're a pastor, intercessor, or a passionate viewer, this is your call to action. Go to fparmy.com and join the War Room today.
How you doing?
Hey, Mason.
Mason.
My boots.
Thank you.
A place to make my own. A place that I call home. This place that I call home.
Where's Mom's purse?
Your toe chains are a little loose. Could spark a wildfire.
Thanks a lot.
Anytime. You should check out SmokeyBear.com. They've got a bunch of tips on wildfire prevention.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This is the Flashpoint Television Network.
Welcome to Hans Hess Ministries broadcast. We're so glad that you could join us today, and we pray that this message from Pastor Hans Hess fills you with faith, gives you hope, and empowers you as a believer to go out and reach other people for Jesus. Enjoy the message.
Hey, I'm Hans Hess. Thanks for joining me again this week. And we're finishing this whole series we've been talking about called Beyond the Veil, talking about the tabernacle in the Old Testament. And I really hope it's been an encouragement to you because we've preached several sermons and you've seen the pieces and parts of this over the past several weeks. So we're in the Holy of Holies. We're in the place where God is dwelling among the nation of Israel. We're in the inner sanctum.
Trash bag.
And in that place is the Ark of
I need a trash bag.
In that Ark was to be
I need a trash bag.
the tablets of commandments.
I need a trash bag. Nobody was...
Pot of manna, and then Aaron's rod that broke. And then over
got one more bag of
that
trash
ark
to
was
put
the
on.
mercy seat where the priest would offer the blood sacrifice. Up on either side of that ark were the angelic cherubim looking at each other, guarding the way to the presence of God. And then between the cherubim, over the mercy seat, was the glory of God. Oh, hallelujah. Last week I talked about the high priest and how he would be able to go once a year into that place and offer a sacrifice for the nation of Israel. But that sacrifice in the Old Testament had a time stamp. It was only good for 1 year. Then they would have to come back the next year and offer another sacrifice, as well as the thousands of sacrifices that would have been going on in the outer court. Then in the most holy place, once a year, the high priest would come in and offer a sacrifice. But you know, the Bible in the book of Matthew has this amazing passage. And Matthew says that when Jesus died on the cross, that the veil separating the holy place from the most holy place was torn in two. Now, this would have been a massive curtain, thick, but it was torn in two, symbolizing now that Jesus has died on the cross, anyone, everyone has access to the presence and glory of God if we come by Jesus. Oh man, by the blood of Christ, you and I have access now into the very presence of God. You know, in Matthew 21, Jesus had his triumphal entry, and he goes into the city of Jerusalem, and then he takes a whip, and he casts out the money changers from the temple courts. And actually, those money changers would set up in what was known as the court of the Gentiles, because the Gentiles, the non-Jews, could only go so far. They couldn't go further up into the outer court area of the temple, or it would be a death penalty. Josephus mentions this in his words. But Jesus cleans them out because they were ripping people off, number one. But number two, I think it was a prophetic act. I think it was a prophetic act that he was saying, now the days of this temple system have come to an end. I am the new temple of God. Tear me down, in 3 days I'll rise again. And then he dies on the cross. The access to the Holy of Holies is opened up for all humanity. Hallelujah. Now, no matter what background you come from, what ethnic background you come from, what socioeconomic background you come from, you have access to the very presence of God that only the Old Testament high priest had. And that is through the blood of Jesus. So if you've never accepted the Lord, now is the time. Get the blood applied to your heart. If you've never prayed to God, now is the time to do it in the name of Jesus. And let him open up the access to God's glory in your life. As you can tell, I get excited about this. This is an awesome subject, and I love it, love it, love it. I pray it's a blessing to you today. So let's go beyond the veil into the most holy place. You have your Bibles open, first of all, to the book of Ephesians. Let's start in the New Testament to see how all of this comes to pass and what all this means. Ephesians chapter 2, and I'm going to begin reading with verse 11. Ephesians 2:11. Therefore remember that formerly you who are Gentiles by birth are called uncircumcision by those who call themselves the circumcision, which is done in the body by human hands. Remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without hope and without God in the world, but now
I
in
got an idea, Barb.
Christ Jesus, you who
Somebody
were,
can stand up next to the
far away have been
dumpster
brought
and
near
we can throw the bags to you from the street.
We have been brought near by the
That
blood.
way we wouldn't have to take a lot of trips up and down.
What we couldn't access before, now we can access.
I think,
What we didn't
thanks
have
for
before,
volunteering,
now we
stand
have.
up and-
God's been trying to be with his people
Oh, you
ever
don't have
since
your, you don't have your good
the book of
shoes on
Genesis
for
chapter
snow.
1, verse 1.
Snowshoes.
And now he's coming near
Snowshoes.
to us. Tabernacle was a temporary system. Now, through Jesus, we all have access. Somebody shout amen. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier. Somebody say, Jesus is the barrier breaker. Come on, say it again. Jesus is the barrier breaker. So that wall of hostility, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in the flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. He came and preached to you peace to you who are far away, and peace to those who are near. For through him we have access to the Father by one Spirit. Now listen to this final paragraph here. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers. Can somebody say, thank God? But fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the chief cornerstone. In him the whole building is joined together and rises to become a holy temple in the Lord. And in him you too are being built together to become a dwelling place in God, or in which God lives by his Spirit. Can we all say amen? I'm going to circle back to that passage as I get toward the end of this thing. But that sums it up. That's what God has done in Christ, bringing us to himself. So let's look at the Holy of Holies. I want to look at it in depth and then go into three practical points that you can leave here with. But first of all, let's talk about three things. First, there is the veil. Secondly, there is the ark. Thirdly, there's the Day of Atonement. I want to deal with those things. The veil, the ark, the Day of Atonement. So in the book of Exodus, chapter 26, verse 31, Lord told Moses, make a curtain of blue, purple and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen with cherubim woven into it by a skilled worker. Hang it with gold hooks on 4 posts of acacia wood overlaid with gold and standing on the 4 silver bases. Hang the curtain from the clasps and place the Ark of the Covenant law behind the curtain. The curtain will separate the holy place from the most holy place. So if we're inside the Holy of Holies now, but if we look at it, this would have been the holy place here where we already have been with the candelabra, the table of showbread, the altar of incense. And now this is the veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place. And notice it has cherubim, those angelic figures, woven into the fabric of that veil. Because if you'll remember in the book of Genesis, God placed Adam and Eve in a garden in Eden. And when they sinned, God drove them out of that garden and placed 2 cherubim with flaming swords to guard the way back so they would not be able to come back into the Garden of Eden, which I believe was the place where God met with them and God dwelt with man. And so what he's saying is the way to God here is still guarded in a symbolic fashion by the cherubim. Even in the ark, the cherubim guard the presence of God. Isn't that interesting? So the veil was that thing that protected the nation of Israel from God's presence. Because being in a sinful state, they couldn't come before God without being killed. So only once a year, only the high priest could come beyond that veil and come into this room. And he had to take the incense from the altar and put it in a censer and smoke up everything so it could be hidden, so he could make the sacrifice and get out of there. He had to be atoned for himself, and then he went and made atonement for the nation of Israel. And the priests really represented Israel. Israel couldn't come before the presence of the Lord, so the high priest represented Israel. Once a year, he could come behind that veil and make the sacrifices appropriate for Israel. But something happened in the New Testament. In Matthew chapter 27, when Jesus died on the cross, it says that from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. At about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And some of those standing heard this. They said, he's calling on Elijah. And immediately one of them ran and got a sponge and filled it with wine vinegar and put it on a staff and offered it to Jesus to drink. And the rest said, now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. The moment he died, and Matthew says, at that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two. The curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life, and they came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. Why was the veil of the temple torn in two? Why was it torn in two? It was torn in two symbolically to represent now no longer was God's of acacia wood. Overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. And the poles are to remain in this ark, and they're not to be removed. Then put the ark in the ark, the tablets of the
Where is everybody?
What?
Nanny ready to go? She would have fell too, who knows?
You are making us But she can get up while you awful.
They should have that dig to wave by now.
Are you going with us, Jessica? I'm staying. I'm tired. Jessica's staying here.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to pee pretty soon. I guess I can pee over there.
Where's Amanda?
Maybe she went out the garage.
Where's Amanda?
She must have went out here, I guess. Left the door closed.
Jessica, where's Amanda?
I don't know. She must be up. Oh. I guess.
Bye, Jessica, we're leaving.
Goodbye. I got her backpack in the I put the backpack in the back seat. Is that okay?
Yes. Lock the door behind me. Okay? Okay.
find that screen blank, but it was by accident. Come on, come on. No! Charlie! Here. Ah.
Bye.